Welcome to Comic Wars. Think of the show as Fight Night, but without the mess of actual combat. The data will speak for itself before the outcome, but in case it doesn't, we will break all of it down in the outcome at the end of the show. Without further ado, let's dive right into our competitors. As usual, if we had any guests, this is where we would do some guest introductions, have a little conversation about, maybe what kind of content they do, or if they do any content, of course, get to their guesses. This is also a great time for you guys, also in the comments section and in the chat, to go and post your guesses as well, so we can do this live. After that, then we get into the background details. This is where we start breaking down who the character is, who, what, where, why, all the W's of what makes this character who they are. This gets a lot into their age, their height, their weight, and their personality, but also who their creator is. Maybe it's Marvel, maybe it's DC, it could be Disney, it could be anything. So we just start breaking things down right like that. And then after that, then we get into the feats. This is where we start looking at their great strength feats. They're basically the greatest feats they've got possible for every single category of strength, durability, speed, and agility, martial prowess, ingenuity, weapons, and or gadgets, and of course their powers. And this is where we just more or less just try to lay out essentially what these things are that they're bringing to combat. And then we get into the next category shortly after. But as of late, we've been really blending data analysis in with feats. But data analysis essentially is just, it carries over from feats and just breaks down what each of these feats mean. If somebody's able to punch through concrete, how much force does it take? If somebody can catch a speeding car while not running at full bore, what does that look like? What do these things mean? So that way we can really analyze who wins and why down to the finest details. After that, then we get into the character pros and cons. This is almost kind of like a who wins almost, but it more or less weighs out what their strengths and weaknesses are against each other. Yet again, this is another one that kind of blends in with data analysis as we start to go and label with, some characters, maybe they just dominate in the category. We're going to give them the point right there. And this does happen. We've had a few characters where we've had to just give the points on a few different categories just because it's complete and utter domination. But this is also where we show off their weaknesses, really what these weaknesses can mean. It can be, maybe it's a weakness to themselves, something that hinders them in combat. After that, then we get into the guest analysis. Yet again, we have to have a guest for this, but for those in the chat, this is also where we can start breaking things down. Maybe you don't agree with what I'm talking about. Or in the comment section down below, this is a great time to go and also post those questions as well, or disagreements, agreements, whatever. And let's talk about it. But this is more or less where if you guessed in the intro, your guess is right over there. Maybe you guessed character A over here, and maybe you changed your mind after hearing about what they're bringing to combat. Then this is a good time to go do that then. You can go and swap then, and let's see. After that, then we get into the outcome, and this is just where we break the fight down, who wins and why. A lot of the characters this season, we've had to go and essentially break down who wins based on specific scenarios, because it's more or less a draw. If you're just to go and throw them into a room, there's nothing there they can use. It's just a big old infinite plane of nothing, just flat ground. Then this is where this kind of breaks down. We have to give certain scenarios. What's going to give a character an edge, which one's not. And of course, after that, then we get into the preview of the next episode following this one. All right. Let's get into our first character tonight, which is Moon Knight. So this is a character from Marvel Comics. His real name is Mark Spector. That's his dominant personality, his most prominent one at least. He's age 35. He is 6'4" tall. And he weighs approximately 225 pounds. His occupation, he's a vigilante. He's literally a full-time vigilante. He does a lot of hero work. He has teamed up with the Avengers, even been a member of the Avengers, a few different Avengers groups, and He handles a lot more of the supernatural side of things. But he does handle street level. He's very, very street level. There's a lot of reasons why, but this is a character that he has powers, but he doesn't have powers, kind of. I mean, it's a hard one. You guys will see what I'm talking about here in a second. But this guy's a lot more street level. So think kind of like Spider-Man. He's a lot more street level, not really cosmic. Even though he has cosmic powers to some degree, he doesn't go full cosmic a lot of times. Doesn't really go global. He's just mostly just, let's hang out in New York and handle the problems here. Speaking of which, that's also his area of operations, New York City, New York. Now, this is where things get a little interesting, too, because when it comes to his personality, we have to kind of just break down his three main personalities. His other ones, they're generic. We know what they're like, but we'll break them down when it comes down to it if we need to. But first one is Mark Spector, which is a very stubborn and focused personality. And then you have Stephen Grant, which is more of a timid and meek personality. Does a lot more kind of like... he tries to do a lot of de-escalation, and he does a lot more of the conversation, kind of witty banter type of things. He does a lot of that. And then, of course, you have Jake Lockley, which is a socially awkward and extremely violent personality. A little tidbit about him, he does have other personalities that Mark has created, including Spider-Man, Captain America, and Wolverine, among others. As for what feats he's bringing to the fight here, well, when it comes to his strength, his durability, and his speed and agility, well, he's got enhanced physicality directly affected by how close Moon Knight is to a supermoon. Just to give a direct reference of how often these happen. In 2022, there were 4. This year in 2023, there are 4. Not every year are there 4. There's some years where there's 3. Some where there's 2. Some where there's more. It just kind of just differs. As for his durability, he also comes with a very high pain tolerance that even the Punisher himself, who's also got an extremely high pain tolerance, noted that he doesn't even have that high of a pain tolerance compared to Moon Knight. And that should say a lot. This is a guy that literally can just sit there and be tortured. It's the guy that in the Netflix show literally had his fingernails ripped out from his hands and just kind of just took it. You know, we're talking all sorts of nasty torture that occurred, and this guy's got a much higher pain tolerance. So that should say something here. He's also got a telepathic resistance, so good luck on trying to mind control him, things like this. He's even had biological resistance as well when it comes to telepathy, because there was a character that literally his sweat does... he can use that to mind control people. And he was able to mind control an entire apartment complex. Moon Knight literally took the sweat directly into his body. He ingested it, and it didn't do anything. In fact, it actually did the reverse. Moon Knight actually, because of Khonshu, the god in his head, the god of the moon, actually basically made the guy kind of go brain dead. That's the kind of resistance he's got. He's got a lot of support in his mind. But he's self-sustaining, and this is thanks to Khonshu. So things like this, like hunger, thirst, things like that, they don't really affect him as much thanks to Khonshu as well. As for his speed and agility, well, it should also be noted he's also an Olympic-level athlete and gymnast. This is a character that's very, very much like Nightwing level. So, at least up there. On top of that, his combat capabilities comes with, he's an expert martial artist. This includes boxing, judo, Krav Maga, Salat, Dambe, Savat, Eskrima, Karate, Muay Thai, and Kung Fu. He's also a master of weaponry. This includes everything from close quarters, knives and daggers, caltrops, all this, to long range and even automated. So using firearms, and even using things like missiles, like knowing how and when to go and, lock onto something, all that. I mean, he knows all of that. And he's also a master marksman on top of that. So this guy's quite the combatant. As for his ingenuity, well, technically speaking, he's immortal to some degree because Khonshu has brought Moon Knight back to life at least 3 times so far. And it's speculated probably there's going to be a few more storylines coming up here pretty soon where he'll need to be brought back again. But we'll see. Time will tell, correct? So, what else does he come with, though? Well, it's his gadgets. He's got his adamantium weave bodysuit. So, if you guys aren't familiar with adamantium, in the Marvel Universe, it's one of the hardest metals, most powerful metals in existence in the Marvel Universe. This is what makes Wolverine so powerful. What makes the Silver Samurai so powerful. This is incredibly durable metal. It doesn't break very easily. However, it is magnetic, just to note. But it's incredibly durable and it can withstand quite a bit of damage. So we're talking like it's pretty heavy, but on top of that, it's also not much goes through it or breaks it. But he also has a glider cape, very, very much like Batman, where he can glide around the city. He's also got dart launchers. He's got a flashlight, adamantium crescents. That's going to be his equivalent to kind of like a shuriken. They're literally moon crescents, but they're made out of adamantium. They're bladed and all that. He's also got an adamantium truncheon, which is essentially the nunchucks. It comes apart to make dual clubs, and he's also got a grappling hook inside. He's got his crescent launcher pistols, so if he couldn't just throw them, well, he can also shoot them as well. These are much smaller as well, so they're not as big. But these are just their standard crescent launchers. Crescents, these aren't adamantium from what I could gather from. I've looked and I didn't see a whole lot stating that, oh, these were actually adamantium. No, these are, I'm pretty sure they're just a high-grade steel. He's also got an energy shield, which acts similarly to Captain America's vibranium shield for protection. This isn't something he can throw around, but it's an energy projected shield. So think like hard light, kind of like Green Lantern. That'd be the best way to describe it. He can use this energy shield anytime just to go and deflect attacks and things like that. But it acts just like vibranium shield, as in it deflects the attacks. The kinetic energy itself just kind of bounces off of it. You're not really hitting it very easily or anything like this. So he's also got web shooters and claw bracers. So if he needed to go and let's say he was falling too quick from his gliding cape, well, he can now start whipping around just like Spider-Man. And if he needs to go and start cutting things, well, he can do that just like Wolverine. He also has a silver cesty. And divine onks. This is a character that fights the supernatural, so he needs silver cesties. Why? Because werewolves and other things that are weak against silver. And he's got divine onks, which he uses more or less like bludgeoning tools a lot of the time against things that are weak to holy relics. But what about his opponent? What does his opponent bring into this? It's going to be so terrifying. He's made it this far, right? Well, Michael Myers, he's a force to be reckoned with. And for this instance, past Jason, we've been using the newest one, the Halloween Ends version of Michael Myers. The one that's also from Halloween Kills. The same Michael Myers in that timeline, the David Gordon Green timeline. But this is John Carpenter's creation. His real name is Michael Audrey Myers. And he's 65 years old. He's 5 foot 10 inches tall and he weighs approximately 165 pounds. Well, as for his occupation, well, he's just simply that, just a serial killer. That's all he does. And his area of operation is Haddonfield, Illinois. As for his personality, well, he's emotionless. He's extremely intelligent and incredibly devious. It's a character that does a whole lot of prep time. We're talking Batman tier dang near on prep time. This is pretty insane. So when it comes down to how he's going to enter a fight, he's very quick thinking as well. Little tidbit about him though, by far, this is the smallest different iteration of Michael Myers to date. Let's get into his feats though. Well, his strength. It's low tier superhuman level, which is single-handedly, basically how this breaks down. He single-handedly unearthed and moved Judith Myers' tombstone, which can weigh anywhere between 100 and 1,000 pounds. It's somewhere around the middle, give or take. I don't think it's definitely not 100 pounds. Based on the size of it, it looks like it's probably about anywhere between 500 and about 700 pounds, at least. And he effortlessly snapped Cameron's neck, which was Allison's boyfriend slash ex-boyfriend in Halloween Kills, and he just effortlessly just slammed his arm down on Cameron's neck, and while his, yeah, I'm not going to get into it, but basically he just broke his neck with one arm. If you break that down, it takes anywhere between 1,000 and 1,250 pounds of force. So we're talking some serious strength here. As for his durability, well, he's just wearing clothing, so there's no armor or anything. But he has an extreme level of pain tolerance, bordering on immunity. He's survived being shot at close range and in the back, tanked getting 3 of his fingers getting blown off by a shotgun, tanked being stabbed several times in the stomach by Allison, kept going, mind you, in the fight with her, tanked being shot, beaten, and stabbed by multiple attackers when the entire Haddonfield mob attacked him. Well, he also killed them after they did that to him. He's also got any resistance to extreme heat. As we can see, that he got some burns, but not really that bad, and just kind of just tanked him a little bit, didn't really do anything to him. As for his speed and agility, well, we know he's at least an Olympic-level athlete. We know this because off-screen, this is how these serial killers work. It almost seems like teleportation. But really, they're just running. There's been several accounts where the writers and all this are saying, no, he can't teleport. No, he can't teleport. No, he can't teleport. So he's not teleporting. For him to get from point A to point B off screen, he's moving at Olympic level athlete levels. So, but he's also quick enough to disarm Allison of her shotgun before she could even react to him. So that's pretty quick. She's a younger woman and all this, and she was pretty quick to react to things, and he just disarmed her super quick. Among that, he also did the same thing to several of the mob that attacked him. They couldn't really do anything to him. As for combat capabilities, well, his martial prowess, well, he's a weapon master, perfectly parried firefighters, including redirecting a saw into one of them, and swiftly took out an entire mob after they knocked him down. This is primarily with his weapon. His weapon of choice was the knife, the kitchen knife to be specific. But he has used multiple other weapons to completely just demolish opponents. As for his ingenuity, well, he plans far ahead and stalks opponents to study them, which is, he's almost always undetected during this as well. There we go. And for last bit, well, he comes equipped with one weapon, which is his kitchen knife. As for powers, he does have powers, and I do have 2 here. Yes, I should have went and gone in and completely redone this, but it's there for a reason now. It really is. We want to emphasize his healing capabilities. It's pretty ridiculous. Literally, the more he kills and instills fears, the more he recovers. This is a character that if he's... It depends on the amount he's killed, because his healing is it's a factor, okay? Because we're going to be playing with ifs here, because when it comes down to it, we can just go and look at it as just his standard, and we know where he's at. But he's also got the empowerment ability, which, once again, the more he kills, the more he instills fear, the more he recovers, and the stronger he gets. So that's the big thing here, because both these characters have these scenario-based abilities and powers. So we're going to go and explore those tonight. This is actually a match where we have to explore those. On top of that, Myers also comes with an actual weakness. You pull off his mask, he will stop attacking until it's back on. His mask is the most important thing to him. Literally over anything else, including his own life. So, all right, let's explore. What do you guys think? We've already gone over the data analysis here, so what do you guys think so far? Is there anything you guys can see that maybe it's a glaring weakness, or maybe I got wrong? I'd love to hear it. Well, this is round 3, so I don't think there's much really wrong at this point if you guys haven't said anything. Well, let's start getting into their strengths and weaknesses. So we know that Moon Knight is completely scenario based on the moon phases. And we know that Myers is gonna get boosts not only for his healing factor, which he actually has a healing factor while Moon Knight does not technically. He's got his immortality, kind of, but it's still, he can be killed, he's just brought back. So it's more of like a respawn almost, not like a revival. So Moon Knight can be killed. It'll just, would he come back? Yes, probably. When it comes down to this, though, Myers not only has a much higher pain tolerance than Moon Knight, but he's tanked a lot more than he's capable of. Moon Knight doesn't have to tank things as much because he's got his adamantium. You got armor versus no armor, and then you're looking at biological durability versus non-biological. But even without a suit, you still got a very high pain tolerance. So this is going to be an interesting fight. And we're gonna, like I said, this is going to come down to scenarios. I've already got an idea how this is going to go down. Now, this is just based on the data here. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time. I'm going to give you guys until 9:30. And we're going to go through and we're just going to kind of just look at some things. But I'll let you guys think on it for a second. Then we'll go right back in and start with outcome. All right. Now, this fight is tricky. But first things first, we know that there's going to be areas where there's going to be some very clear winners, just outright, pretty much every time. For starters, if this will work, there we go. We have the personalities. Mark, or Moon Knight, is going to have several that he can shuffle between. Not necessarily by choice, but they do fight each other and they do tend to come out when they want to come out. But I can guarantee you one we're not going to see in this matchup against Michael, and that is Stephen Gray. He's timid and meek. He's not going to show. Are we going to see Jake Lockley? Absolutely. Are we going to see Mark Spector? Absolutely. Are we going to see things like Wolverine even? Probably. This is going to be kind of a tricky fight. These personalities are going to be fighting for control. End of the day, though, the three ones that are the most powerful are Mark, Steven, and Jake. Those are going to be the ones that almost always show themselves. These other personalities show themselves from time to time, but as good as kind of more like a mental army. He's got like the Avengers in his mind, if you will. This isn't a battle of the mind, though. And when it comes down to it, you got these personalities, these two that are going to be fighting for control, that are going to try to get out as much as possible to try and beat Michael. Not going to go so well. Just because you can tag out with your different personalities and you have the same exact everything doesn't mean you're going to have an advantage here. Mark fights differently than Jake, and Jake doesn't use as many tactics. Mark uses plenty of tactics. So this is really going to come down to really those two main personalities trying to fight for control to be able to take out Michael. Now, when it comes down to it, Michael's got that one personality. He's got the one objective. Very, very mission-oriented. He's going to hold a very, very huge advantage personality-wise. But is that going to be enough? Well, Michael's great with fighting with weapons. When it comes to actual martial prowess, though, he's not really going to be able to compete with Moon Knight. However, that being said, Moon Knight doesn't really... You have to explore the closer he is to a supermoon. This is where everything is scenario-based here. But we know that personality-wise, Michael has this. When it comes down to everything else, when it comes down to his punching strength and speed and all this, yeah, you got Moon Knight who's going to have reach on Michael. He's going to be able to throw a little more weight, just a little bit. But is the reach really going to give him an advantage when Michael's literally 10 steps ahead of him mentally? No, not really. So where this goes to Michael Myers. It's an advantage, but it's not a huge advantage. Like I said, more or less straightforward. But as you can see, this is where things are going to get a little more interesting here, because now we have to break down the strength. So his enhanced physicality to go and boost all of his stats, right? Then that means Michael's got to have some boosting for him as well, which means he's got to have fear, which we know one of Moon Knight's personalities are going to be deathly afraid of him. So he's already going to have a fear booster there. And then he's also going to give him some kills. Is this only fair? Right? So when it comes down to that scenario, if we're going to give both of them something, so that way they can be at their absolute best, Michael wins that handedly. So when it comes to strength, it's not an absolute crushing, but Michael wins that. When it comes to durability, this is where things are a little interesting, because the durability, you have to count Moon Knight's armor. Is Michael going to be able to break through the armor? Does he really have to, though? Because the armor does move. It's weaved in. But does that mean he can still, like, for instance, can somebody's neck still be snapped? Or their arms be broken? Absolutely. Absolutely. Just the suit itself, it's going to be, like, bulletproof, but it can still move. Think like Kevlar. Is it going to protect you from a knife wound? Most knife wounds, yes. Same thing with his adamantium weave armor. That's what it's going to be. He's got the plates and everything, but at the end of the day, is he going to be perfectly safe from Michael? No. And then you got their pain tolerance. Who's got more of a pain tolerance? Well, Michael does, easily. And then you got to look at what they've been able to survive. Michael's tanked actual hits, like ones that are like lethal and putting people into shock very easily. He tanks them like it's nothing. When it comes to durability, though, Moon Knight's armor is going to give him such an advantage against Michael's knife. Yeah, there's going to be some wounds he's going to get from it, but is it going to be enough to, like, kill him per se? Nah, probably not. He's not going to go for the defeat real quick. But is it going to be enough to stop Michael from, like, physically hurting him? Not at all. End of the day, who does this go to? It goes to Michael. Speed and agility, though, that's a different story. Michael does not win this at all. Yeah, Michael can go and react faster than Allison. And yeah, he's off screen. He's got Olympic level athlete capabilities, but this is where you have to break down Moon Knight. Moon Knight is also an Olympic level athlete and gymnast. And then you've got a boost to his speed and agility because of being right there with the supermoon. Moon Knight wins that. Both categories. He's also a gymnast, which is going to give him more of an agility set of things anyways. Comes to martial prowess, we've already stated that's definitely going to be Moon Knight. Comes to ingenuity. Moon Knight almost kind of relies on his tactics, his military tactics, and his immortality given by Khonshu. Michael, no, he studies his opponents. He studies hard. He's fought people that they've got actual skills in combat, police officers and things like this. So he's going to be able to keep up with Moon Knight. He's going to be able to study him. Okay, well, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. Okay, but this is what I can do. He's going to deduce it real quick. Plus, on top of that, he doesn't care what has to happen. He'll take the hit to get in, to go in for the win. When it comes to ingenuity, goes to Michael. Weapons and gadgets. Well, comes to weapons and gadgets, it's pretty much a no-brainer. That goes to Moon Knight. Why is that? Look what he comes equipped with. It's just ridiculous. You look what Michael comes with. It's not so impressive. He comes with a kitchen knife. And this is where we've got a complete outclassing. First outclassing in this entire fight, which is going to Moon Knight. However, the powers, though. Who's really got more power on this? Well, Moon Knight doesn't technically have powers. He does have some kind of, the closer he is to the supermoon, and he gets basically just boosted a little bit onto his initial stats, and his revival capability, but that's it. So who wins on powers? Michael does. Now, if you guys haven't been counting up until this point, I can tell you directly who wins this. And it's close. It's actually a closer fight than you'd think. It's Michael Myers. But why is that? Well, you think about it. Moon Knight's he has to rely on that supermoon to be able to go and keep up with Michael. Michael doesn't need that. For one. So if you just based on that one scenario alone and Michael wins, every other scenario, it's going to get handed to Michael. Let's say Michael doesn't have his healing or his empowerment, and Moon Knight has all this. Now, this is where the scenario is it's going to be unfair on one side. Does Moon Knight still compete? No. Even at his greatest, he doesn't really compete. He's got peak human. Michael's beyond that. He's got Olympic level athlete, capabilities. Both of them do. But we already know that doesn't make much of a difference. There's no real big budges. Strength and durability, that doesn't adjust. Moon Knight still loses. Speed and agility, does that really adjust more than it already does? It was already in Moon Knight's favor. Doesn't really adjust. When it comes to weapons and gadgets, nope, doesn't adjust. Martial prowess doesn't adjust, therefore there's nothing here. Nothing's going to get swung into any other direction. It's just going to get amplified. At Moon Knight's best, he still can't beat Michael. It is close, though. It is very close, but there's not going to be many scenarios where we don't even need to actually analyze the scenario at all, other than how close Moon Knight is to a Superman. That's it. If we don't analyze that, then yeah, it's still Moon Knight loses. It doesn't make a difference in the scenario. It doesn't make a difference where they're at. Michael's going to come out of him swinging. All right. Well, let's get on to our next little tidbit, which is our preview for Friday's episode of Comic Wars. It's going to be Spawn versus the Joker. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys, hopefully I'll see you guys on Wednesday for our next episode of the Ken Mains Dan Hennon email debacle concerning the